Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new year. 2023 is upon us. It's another year for this game, Marvel Contest of Champions. And like I've done the past couple of years, I'm going to be doing a ranking of who I think the best champions were released the previous year. I don't typically do lots of tier lists and top 10s and things like that, but I have traditionally done the previous year's champs ranked in some way, shape, or form. And that's what I'm going to do this year. I'm going to make it a very clean top 10. And I will say I'm not going to do honorable mentions this year because literally every champ that doesn't make this list is an honorable mention. I think 2022 has been the most exciting year for new champion releases that we've ever seen because there aren't really champions that stand out as being completely meta-shattering, game-breaking champions. There's obviously a few toward the top that are just like, inching out the other ones. But, there was no Hercules, there was no Kitty Pryde that are just like the obvious top two this year. And also, there really were no duds. Every single one of these champions has some form of use in the game. You can make an argument for ranking them up for offense, defense, battlegrounds, anything like that. And I really think that all of this sort of like trepidation that we had for this balancing program, it actually ended up working out great because these champion designers that we have on the team now ended up making some very creative champions, maybe take a couple risks. And in doing so, basically none of the champions got nerfed at all. Like every champion either stayed the same, like a small glitch in the case of Wiccan was removed, or in the case of Gore, they're actually getting buffed. So in my opinion, that really shows that the balance program is doing what it's meant to be. It's giving creative space to the designers to make interesting champions that counter things in the game that are usable, that are fun, that are slightly different. And I'm just looking forward to the future, and hopefully we get more designs like that. I'd love to know if you agree with me on this, but I'm pretty excited with about 2022 and the way these champions ended up. So with that, this is, again, going to just be a very clean top 10. I'm going to start at number 10 and work my way up to the top. My list might be a little different than some other people's because I have different priorities than other people, and I like to think about things in terms of the big picture. So with that, let's get started with number 10. And I'm giving this spot to Wiccan. Now, Wiccan definitely suffers from the existence of Tigra and Rintrah in the game because, you kind of want a neutralized champ on your roster, and those two are arguably more powerful in a more variety of situations. But Wiccan really is his own champion as well. He has various utility that the others don't, like the full-on armor break immunity, his regen against energy damage, like especially against Terrax, for example, is unlike anything else in the game. He has immunity to inverted controls, and he also has that counter to unblockable attacks against cosmics, which can come in handy. Some people saw that for null bosses with the unsteady unblockable and things like that. But he has a really, really unique kit. One of my friends, Mobius, said he was sort of like a Ghost Rider in that like you need to kind of keep track of, in his case, it's spells instead of judgments. And I do like that there's not like a cookie cutter way to play him. If you really understand him, like when to go for the neutralize, when to go for the heavy power gain, when to go for the resistance, when to go for the incinerate. And then obviously if there's a lot of buffs, you can create tons of plasmas and incinerates and really have a good time. So he's a really good control champ. He really has a lot of damage and utility, especially against cosmic champions and champs with a lot of buffs. And he does have a very solid use in the game. Like I said, the only reason he's not higher is because the other neutralize options just tend to work in a broader case scenario. That said, Wiccan is an amazing champion, and I'm glad he made the top 10. Coming in at number 9, we have Spot. Now, I made a video on Spot. I'm going to link it in a card here. I really, really enjoyed this guy, and a few people that we know have him and have been using him in Battlegrounds, and he's sort of proving the theory that he's going to be a very good champion. Now, the thing I like about Spot is that, yes, he is a science champion, and he has some of the tropes of the science class, like his special one has a buff immunity on it, It's technically a debuff, so it's not like a permanent buff immunity like some of the other champs, but that obviously comes in handy against like your Mojos and your Dormammus and things like that. And he has big red burst damage. That's obviously something we are very familiar with between Quicksilver, Spidey 99, Scorpion, but he sort of has a universal characteristic to him where he doesn't just counter Mystic champions. Like, I feel like he's not going to be as good as Ghost, but he has something about him with his portal block, which basically gives him insane block proficiency after the first hit, and then the ability to just miss. Like, he gets this really, really long untouchable where you just can't do any damage on him, and then very easily you build up your ruptures, and then you can do like a massive burst off of your special too. I just remember when I was playing him, it was a pretty simple style that kind of like transcended a lot of annoying things in the game, in a way that your Ghosts and other champions like that can do. So even though he's only number 9, I think it's because there were some other science champions this year that are clearly better at the things we typically think of in the science class. Spoiler, it's obviously Quicksilver and Scorpion are going to be higher than he is. But the thing that made him make the list for me was that I do believe he's going to be able to counter other classes perhaps better than those two, and that he has sort of like a universal play style to him, and if you play him in a skilled manner, the potential is very, very high. So I'm very much looking forward to him coming into the next featured crystal, because I think when more people have him, they're going to understand how powerful he is and really start using him in a variety of scenarios. So that is number 9. It's going to be Spot. So now number 8, this is definitely going to be the most controversial one because I think this is going to be a little bit lower than what other people think. But actually at my number 8, I'm going with Galen. And now listen, this guy in the right scenario, even in the not right scenario, can absolutely decimate health pools, and in a very, very simple way. Just medium, light, medium. Throw a heavy attack, throw a special, a lot of things are going to die. But I think he suffers a little bit from the Corvus Glaive problem, where if you don't have him at the highest rank possible, his value goes down a lot. And I can say that from personal experience, because I have an unduped rank 3, and I will tell you that I try to bring him into a variety of scenarios as a rank 3, and yes, it is a huge burst of damage that is very easy to get to, but it's not enough. Like, he needs rank 4. And that to me tells me that he's as much of a cool champion as he is and as powerful as he can be in the right scenario, he's a little bit of a one-trick pony for me. Like, yes, he has the power burn immunity, he has the nullify immunity, that's very unique for Cosmic class. But, if he doesn't have the firepower behind him, he really doesn't do much. And we've seen a lot, like in Vega's Battleground Championships, people using Galen, and if that first burst of the harvest doesn't kill them, you got to start all over with your ramp up, and you'll still get them down fairly quickly, but in the meantime, you're taking block damage. Something else might trigger that is going to be not beneficial to you. And, because of that, I look at other champions that are higher up on the list and think, like, if I had this champion at rank 3, can they still basically do what they're going to do? And the answer is yes. Now, Galen, if he's awakened, if he's Sig 120, and he is rank 4, he's going to absolutely destroy stuff for you. But just remember, rank 5s are coming. Are you going to really want to rank 5 him to keep up with the meta? Like I said, it's the Corvus Glaive problem, where if he doesn't have enough firepower, he's not going to be able to do exactly what you think he's going to do. Now, again, right scenario, armor, power burn when he's awakened, things like that, he ramps up super quickly, and it doesn't matter as a rank 3. But in your more generic matchups, I find him not that enjoyable to play, and a little bit repetitive, and sort of one-dimensional. And that's why I put him so low. Now, that's not to say he isn't an extremely powerful option, especially for certain paths in Alliance War and for Battlegrounds. But I really gave this a hard think, and I tried to compare him to the champions that were right above him. And I do feel pretty solid that I'm going to keep him at number 8 for now. So that's Galen, that's number 8. Next up, number 7, I went with Omega Sentinel. Now, this is a champion I have maxed out, rank 4, Sig 200. She's a very, very solid champion. Now, Nimrod exists, and they do have some overlap. But the thing I like about Omega Sentinel is that she's customizable, she's fluid, and the addition of like an actual real heal block, I think she might possibly be the best straight up heal block champion in the game. Very easy to keep it up. Additionally, the cowardice is really good specifically against Kitty Pryde, but it also just sort of adds to her tankiness. Like if you need to be blocking special attacks, not everyone thinks of cowardice as utility in that way, but you know, there are times where you need to just like block parts of specials, and having these giant cowardices in addition to the armors really makes you not take that much damage. And then of course, just like a straight up miss counter in the game is something that I value very highly, and she has very easy access to that as well. You throw on top of that against mutants with prowess, not as much as Nimrod, but she does with her awakened ability really punish prowess. Like if you've ever fought a Toad or a Sauron with her and then thrown a special 2, the fireworks really go off. The auto block really comes in handy, especially against mutants. You're going to be ramping up fairly quickly to get to those 10 armors. And the auto block, it's just like Medusa used to be back in like Act 5. It's just like a free safety net. You're gonna parry them and not take any damage. I do really like that. And then just against Domino and anyone else who has some kind of ability accuracy reduction as a mutant, it's really gonna come in handy to not have to deal with anything. And then unlike Nimrod, she has the Nullify immunity, which means she can take stuff like Man-Thing and not even sweat. She can take things like Power Snack and Buffet and not sweat at all. So to me, that's a very unique thing in the tech class. I believe only Civil Warrior also has the Nullify immunity, and obviously I'm taking her over Civil Warrior any day of the week. She's just a very customizable and fluid champion. I really like her play style, and she does have some pitfalls. Like obviously if there's too much going on in the matchup, it's really easy for her debuffs to fall off. Her max damage potential is not quite the same as what Nimrod can do in just like one special 2, but Nimrod does have a few limitations. Like he's obviously not good against shock immune, and he's not super good against Bishop, and she can take those matchups. Like she's not the best Bishop counter in the game, but I like her over Nimrod for that. And then against Domino and things like that, she's also quite good. So Omega Sentinel, a very sort of like timeless champion with the heal block, the miss counter, and the other mechanics that she has. I really enjoy playing her, and I think she's a really solid number 7 champion on this list. All right, number 6, we've got Valkyrie. Now, I personally love Valkyrie. She's perhaps my favorite champion of the year, even though I didn't rate her the highest. I was so excited when I finally got her. I used a generic Awakening Gem, all my generic Sig Stones, took her all the way to rank 4, Sig 200. And you know what? Before we even talk about her kit, Sig 200 Valkyrie, and not Sig 199, mind you, it has to be Sig 200, is easily the best unstoppable counter in the game. All you have to do is land a combination of 10 basic hits or 10 hits into their block even, and then you're set for the entire match. Unstoppable is going to do nothing to you for the rest of the match. And to me, that is incredible, right? It's not slow. It's not a debuff that you have to maintain. It's not like Captain America where you have to land parries and it doesn't work against passive unstoppables. It's just unstoppable doesn't work, and that has so many applications, whether it's you're fighting Thing, or whether you're fighting even like Sasquatch or Nimrod or something like that who has unstoppable in their kit. And then you look at like Act 8, there's unstoppable all over the place, and like they usually give you ways to deal with it, but just being able to turn it off, like we're seeing Jessica Jones in the game now is going to be an annoying unstoppable champ. So right out of the gate, like her awakened ability is super broken, man. It's so easy to just count. It's not broken, but it's just like very powerful. And then her kit is designed around doing damage through block. And if you think about, a lot of the most annoying things in the game happen either when you hit the opponent or when you knock down the opponent, or when you throw specials and knock them down, or things like that. And she can completely bypass that, like without even knowing how her kit works and her combo and getting the buffs and everything. If you treat it like the invade node and you just hit their block, you gain power, you gain combo, you gain pierce buffs. That way you get to a special 2, throw it into the block with 3 pierce buffs and 1 passive pierce, and the damage is outrageous. And again, like, you haven't made contact with them, you haven't, any of their abilities that would trigger on contact haven't happened unless if they also happen on block. It's just a very, very powerful mechanic, and something that you can start the match doing and never change your course of action and just whittle them down that way. Now, if you know the finesse of how her combo inversion works, and you really, really build up, you can get an even more massive special 2. I have a video on her from the CCP. I kind of go over her major rotation so that you can get like 3 bulwarks and 3 pierce and then throw the special 2, and it's pretty incredible. The fact that she sort of lives in this space between cosmic and skill, she has the skill red damage like through her instant bleeds, and also a shrugging ability, but as a cosmic-esque champ, she's got access to buffs and like pierce and bulwark. I just think it's a really, really creative design, and she's just very relevant in the contest right now. The previous BG's meta, Rich Get Richer, she was an absolute menace on attack, and I think even in this next one where we're having the static defense, she's also going to be good, because you're not going to be able to trigger armors through the block. That little counter for the hit me I dare you doesn't happen when you hit their block, so she's going to be quite good for that as well. And then I think as more people kind of learn her rotation, she's going to continue to be a nuke in Battlegrounds. Just a very, very solid champion. Really, really like her kit. Also has access to stun immunity if you build it appropriately, and her shrug is 90%, which is very, very high. That's like a top sig crossbones level of shrugging if you build her up properly again. So very versatile champ, because of just that very simple thing that she does her damage through block. I really, really like her kit, and I think she's a very solid number 6. All right, now we come down to the top 5, and my number 5 is going to be Quicksilver. Now, this guy is arguably the highest amount of utility packed into one science champion in the entire game. Now, this tends to happen with the Summoner's Choice champions. Like, obviously Hercules is a huge champion in this game, but Quicksilver is definitely a little more balanced than Hercules, and a lot of people will never play him because they don't like the 10-hit combo. They don't like the slowing down thing after the special 3. There's things about him that make him a little bit of a turnoff to some people, but if you put in the time to learn this guy, they literally said, like, what is anything a science champion can do in this game, and let's just give it to him. Like, he's got the Wither, he's got, instead of full-on buff immunity, he just has no dex, which in some ways is more valuable because it doesn't have that interaction with neutralize. So, going up against a Rintra or a Wiccan, you're not going to have any adverse effects like Spidey 99 does. His evade window during terminal velocity is extended, so like dexing those Dr. Doom special 2s is even easier. When he gets to 600, he can parry non-contact attacks. Like, they totally didn't have to give that to him, but they did. So, against like Maw and Iron Man Infinity War and those annoying champs like that, he can just parry them. He's got a slow that also has the miss counter, which is just like Stealth Suit Spider-Man has. And obviously the whiplash and the big red damage, just incredible. When he's awakened, he can get up to 6 of the withers, which is like a huge amount of power reversal if they're gaining passive power gain. It's a very, very interesting champion. You obviously need to know how to use him to maximize him. And then if he's SIG 200, he has a very, very interesting special 3 rotation that makes him valuable in the Everest type content. And who knows, if some kind of Everest content comes in the near future, I think Quicksilver is going to be a very important part of that team that you're building because of that SIG ability that he has. So, right out of the gate, a SIG 0 Quicksilver is an amazing counter to Mystic champions and anything you would ever want a Science champion to do. But then if you awaken him and SIG him, he gets gets those extra whiplashes, he gets a longer terminal velocity, and then like I said, he gets access to this crazy special 3 rotation where you can just like double up your whiplashes and get these like insane bursts of like 6 figures of numbers very easily coming down on the opponent. So yeah, Quicksilver, very, very good champion. He could arguably be made higher. I think we're going to have to see what the content in 2023 looks like, because if Quicksilver is just like running circles around everybody, he could obviously go higher. But right now, I feel pretty confident with him as number 5. All right, next up is number 4, and this is probably the other one that is slightly controversial because I think this person is going to be higher than some people think, but I'm going with Immortal Iron Man or whatever, Iron Doom. Did I say that right? I don't know what his name is. Doom. I call him Immortal Doom, even though that's not at all what it is. It's Infamous Iron Man. Jeez, I cannot get this guy's name right, so we're just going to call him Immortal Doom because why not? Doom. So I look at this guy, and he has not reached his peak potential yet, and it's the slight disappointment of it looks like Doom, it plays like Doom, but it's not Doom, right? However, if you look at him as a tech champion, I look at him as an updated version of Guardian. And now Guardian is still an extremely relevant and powerful champion in the game, but he's got even more to his kit than that. Like, if you want a science champion, if you want a tech champion who is tanky, who has an armor, who doesn't crit but has a way of punishing it, who has power control, who has cowardice, can just like turn off Kitty Pryde and Bishop in like a blink of an eye. And then, you know, when you sig him up, he gets that crazy special lock and the regen, and he also gets like extra block proficiency and energy resistance like Guardian would. You know, this guy is very powerful, and I think people just don't have him enough, or they're like only treating him as a prestige champ. I think that the content in the future, this guy is going to be eating it up. He's very hard to die with if you're playing him on offense. The only way is if you kind of don't understand his kit and you treat him like Doom and like you push them to a special 3 by accident. But there is a very viable sort of like Doom Cycle-esque rotation where, you know, I think the key is throwing a heavy before throwing the special 3 so that you're already in the aura. When you throw the special 3, then you get an energize, and then by throwing a special 1, you get a really long special lock, and at that point you can just hope to chain a couple special 2s during the aura, and you're getting massive control, massive damage. And like I said, the whole time you've got an armor up, you've got various immunities, and you know, you're very tanky on top of all that, and you're not critting, and you're shocking the opponent with red damage. I just think there's more to him than like some people's disappointment on him has let on to. He's a very balanced champion. He's not as like OP broken as Doom is and was when he first came out. So again, he's never gonna live up to the hype of Mystic Doom. But for like looking at a tech champion, I think I originally wanted Omega Sentinel higher than him, but then I really did the side by side, and I was like, ooh, I don't know, man. This guy, he's more survivable. He's got more control. He's got a little bit more variety in play style. Like if things are going south, there are little tricks that you can do with him to kind of save yourself. And then if you do make a mistake, you do get like that massive special lock and regen. And, you know, because he's the Prestige King, people are going to want to Sig 200 this guy anyway. And when he is Sig 200, it's very powerful. So like you're getting something back for that investment. I just think there's a lot going on here, and you know, you could argue like Valkyrie and Quicksilver are higher than him. You could argue Galen is higher than him, but when I really put everyone side by side, I do firmly believe he is the 4th best champion of this game. If I do pull him, I'm going to be super excited about it. Probably give him a generic gem and just start learning how to play him, because there's a lot going on. Just like Doom's kit originally looked like to us, Doom is a very sophisticated champion that can do a lot, and I think he's going to make an impact this year. All right, well, we've made it to the top 3, and you can probably guess who they are. Just it comes down to what the order is going to be. So for my top 3, number 3 is going to be Rintra. And yeah, Rintra, I think I was kind of wrong about him. I underestimated this guy on the CCP server. I didn't even make a video on him. But this dude is making an impact. I am somewhat surprised he didn't get any kind of balancing, because there's something about like his ability to like just stand there and take no damage while regenning against the root and then throwing a massive special 2 that was like, wow, this guy feels broken, but when you think about it, he really isn't, because he has a very low crit rate, so that special 2 doesn't crit that often. And then, you know, sometimes he takes a little bit of finesse playing because you have to deal with his power gain, and you know, when are you going to throw which special. If you get to a special 3, you get a nice regen, which is nice, but it kind of messes up the rhythm of the fight. And then obviously there's no power control that he has, so like you can't just YOLO like you can with Dr. Doom. But I have said in previous videos that I do think he's the second best Mystic champion overall. You know, Tigra with high skill is probably number 2 for sure, but just for any average player like myself, Rintra is going to complement Doom so well. And, you know, especially because he's such an annoying defender and attacker, like he's just a staple of BG's decks. And like anyone with a Rintra either is doing like massive stuff on attack or defense with him, or he's just getting banned and he's thinning out your deck because he's that good. I really like his access to neutralize, especially against non-cosmic champions. It's still a very, very good neutralize. It's not as powerful as Tigra's against non-cosmics, but when it comes to the cosmics themselves, it's just always up, and it does have that increased ability accuracy, which means against, you know, aspect of evolution, or if there's any type of ability accuracy stuff happening with those cosmics, that he is going to still be able to take care of the fight very easily. And you know, you just corner them, you end in a light, you build up ruptures. The ruptures themselves do a ton of damage, they're just ticking away, but then when you detonate with a giant special 2, it's one of the biggest special 2s in the game, especially if it crits. And then, you know, he's just very hard to kill. Lots of health, he's got lots of energy resistance. Armor breaks don't do anything against him. He has access to his personal root, which is a debuff that benefits from willpower. And then if things go south and you need to regen mid-fight, you can just throw a special 3. And the Sig ability, you know, is, some people are not a big fan of it because it adds power gain, it messes up the rhythm of the fight. I personally like it, especially at like low-ish Sig. I have it at Sig 40. I mean, you have those extra power gains and extra regen. I think it's worth having. But yeah, Rintra kind of speaks for himself, and I am not the best Rintra player, but he has won me so many Battlegrounds matches just within one special 2. I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time in this game, and he's just so fun and well designed. So he is my number 3. All right, top 2. This one was really hard for me to decide between these 2 champions, which I thought was the best. So I'm going to kind of do them together, but I ended up going number 1 as Scorpion and number 2 as Hulkling. And before I go into detail on both of the champions, the reason I went with Scorpion for number 1, I think they're pretty neck and neck in terms of just who they are, but the team building and the synergies that you get off of Scorpion in addition to his basic kit is what sort of rose in my mind to give him number 1. And we'll get into that in a minute, but I do want to talk about Hulkling first. Hulkling has grown on me like, I don't know, someone fill in the metaphor. He's one of my favorite champions, and the thing I love about him is how intuitive his kit is. If you hit the opponent, you get aptitudes, which makes you have more damage off your furies. If you do a well-timed block, you get a bulwark, which makes your block stronger. If you hit their block, your damage into block gets stronger. If you get hit, you get a regen and you get some of that damage back. If you get hit a ton, you get an indestructible. If you hit their block a ton, you go unblockable. If you throw a special 2, you get a Fury. It's already his biggest move, and then you get a bigger one. If you do it while they're unblockable, you get 2 Furies. If you Sig 200, those Furies exist for a really long time. That's his kit. It's like you do something and he amplifies it for you. So even if you don't know how to play him at all, he's extremely survivable. He hits super hard. And then you throw on top of it, he has poison and shock immunity. Those are very valuable. Those definitely come in handy, especially in tandem with one another. And then on top of that, he is also power burn immune, not just to tech champions, to all champions. So that means obviously Penny Parker, he's the best counter in the game. I think he's better than Galen personally, just the way he works. I think he's faster. And then additionally, you know, it's just like if you get hit too much, you go indestructible. Like I said, he's really hard to kill. He's really annoying to fight on defense. And he doesn't really need a SIG ability. Like the extra Furies are nice for ending. The extra duration on Furies is nice. The additional, you know, like armor penetration you get off of the Pierces are nice. But he's just so simple and easy to use and just gets the job done. Another underrated thing about him is that when he consumes his little cosmic charges to get a buff, he gets a little burst of power. And that power gain, it allows you to get to that special 2 really fast. It obviously makes him even more annoying on defense. He's just a great champion. Like taking him in, again, like comparing him to Galen, who I said really needs that rank 4 treatment to be super powerful. A rank 3 Hulkling can just like wipe the entire game, man. I mean, I had him as a rank 3 in my deck for BGs for the first 3 seasons, and he was a force to be reckoned with on offense and defense. And I took him to rank 4 even unduped because I was just ready to take him to the next level. But, you know, he can do so much. Like some people were using him in Eternity of Pain as like a 5-star, for example, against that Penny Parker boss. It's just a super well-designed kit. And I really think like if there are more champions like him in the game coming out, it's going to be a great game for a long time because he's just so well designed. But with that, let's get to Scorpion. Like I said, the only reason I had him slightly beating Hulkling was because of the synergies, and let's just briefly talk about those. There's obviously the insane team with Agent Venom and Kraven that makes Agent Venom great, but man, if you slap on Venom or Agent Venom on this guy, his damage is almost absurd. Like again, I kind of thought that this would be balanced because I thought it was a little bit too much. When it was on the CCP, it was actually bugged to be less damage than it is today, but then they fixed it and they kept it in, man. And I think, you know, if ever his content comes out, him with Agent Venom is going to be a team, man. There's going to be a way to do that. But that's not even the half of it, right? Spidey 99 gets like double ruptures when he's got a wither up. So that means, you know, if you have an unawakened Spidey 99, all of a sudden he becomes way more powerful because you can easily get to 20 ruptures. Even an awakened one, it just helps him ramp up faster if you're hitting their block. Then, you know, we've got the one with Toad. It gives Scorpion a slow. It's like this guy doesn't need a slow on top of everything else he has, but there is that. There's the stealthy one, which allows him to pause his cartridges. Very powerful. Then there's the Spider Ham one, which allows you to get even more debuffs if you're playing as Scorpion, for example. There's just so much there for team building. But the thing about Scorpion is he has a very powerful kit, like, period. But there's nothing in the game that can stop what he's doing. There's no combination of debuffs being thrown at you or immunities on the opponent or vulnerabilities or resistances. And when I say nothing, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, but there's practically nothing. There's no combination of nodes that's going to make Scorpion ineffective because he has those shifting immunities and those shifting damage sources. And I mean, the thing that not everyone thinks about is, you know, there's a lot of nodes in the game that are like poison vulnerability or shock vulnerability. Immediately he becomes a massive damage machine when that happens. A lot of champions have energy resistance in the negatives, or they have physical resistance in the negatives. If you pop on shock or rupture respectively, like for example Mojo has negative physical resistance, those ruptures do noticeably more damage against him. That's why he's just such a good Mojo counter. The poison in conjunction with the petrify off of the special 2 will completely block and eventually reverse the healing, and then you will just steal that healing with his awakened ability. Even a Sig 21 in Battlegrounds can throw a special 2 and heal back up to 100% very easily by stealing that willpower healing. When he first came out, a lot of people thought that you had to be doing the like chaining the charged heavy into the specials, and that works. But I find now that we've had him on our accounts for longer and more people are using him, the best way to play him is just do special 2, then special 1 spam. Because what the special 2 does, yes, it has that large burst, which you can, make even bigger with the charge, but you can basically refresh all of the debuffs that you put on them. So it's very easy to get to like 8, 9, or 10 of your debuffs, throw a special 2, it refreshes them all back to like the beginning of the timer, and then by the time you start spamming special 1s, you're easily putting on like 15 or 20 of these debuffs. You have a taunt, so they're just going to be throwing specials. You can block unblockable specials, and it's not a class-based ability like Wiccan where it's only against Cosmic. Like, you can block all unblockable specials. That's definitely going to come in handy. And then of course, if you throw Toad on, then you're also immune to Unstoppable and Evade. So it's like, nothing can stop this guy, man. He is just unbelievably powerful. Red damage obviously gets around stuff like Safeguard. I can go on and on and on about him, especially at rank 4 when you get a slightly increased combat power rate and higher stats. You've already got massive block proficiency. Like, we've got Captain America Infinity War levels of block, meaning you can get perfect parries off of him. It's just a great kit, and I do think that people realize this. But when I was doing the side-by-side between him and Hulkling and considering everything, considering the things that can stop Hulkling, like anything that punishes buffs, there's just nothing that can stop Scorpion, and I think he's very deserving of that number 1 spot. So anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for tuning in. I'd love to hear your opinion. Unlike past years, I went a lot heavier on the featured crystals this year, so I'm very fortunate to actually have a lot of these champions, to have them ranked up. There are many champions on the list, like Gore with his buff, and Black Cat, who's one of my favorite champions, and Toad, who I think is so good. As soon as I start naming the champions, I'm going to realize the ones that I missed, and people are going to get mad. So that's why I'm not doing honorable mentions. But like I said at the beginning of the video, 2022, what a great year for champion design. Very excited for what the new year is going to bring. I'm also really excited that DLL is on the design team. I think he's going to be a great resource to them moving forward. And his first champion is coming out soon as well. So we'll have to see how that all goes and how it compares to 2022. So that's going to do it for now. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you had a great new year, and I'll catch you in the next one.